Melatonin is a Rhythm Heaven game that has been made as a lo-fi beats to rhythm action 2 game, and it's all beautifully combined together into one of my favourite rhythm games of 2022 and indeed the last couple of years. Its fantastic style and art sense combines with its really chonky but beautifully satisfying lo-fi beat sense, and it just simply works to create this really fluid rhythmic action that I just sunk my teeth into, and it sinks its teeth into me and it didn't let go, and I had to play it through in one single sitting, really transfixed, and have continuously been coming back for more since its launch to really get the most out of Melatonin. The game is quite short, there's 20 levels in total, which sounds quite a lot, but it's 4 mini-games make 4 levels, and then the 5th level combines the 4 mini-games that you've recently just played into like one switch in switch out kind of mechanic. And this brings me to a point that I think might be a little bit of not a trick or a tricky thing for people that don't have rhythm, and it's because although the way how Melatonin sets up beats is very, very simple and easy to grasp, what it does is it starts off by explaining each of the mini games way how you play it with visual cues, and that's great for people that don't have inner rhythm. But then what it does when you get into the scoring mode, and especially the hard mode, is that it starts to remove those visual cues, so you have to be in time with the beat and almost have that rhythmic sync in your head as you go along. And I can see people that enjoy music and rhythm games but don't actually have any rhythm. There are people out there like that, really struggling with this specific mechanic. But all I would say to people that kind of go, ooh, I don't have any rhythm, I'm stuck with that, is that with Melatonin, the lo-fi beats are very 4 beats to the bar, very specific, and they're quite chonky, and so if you tap your feet to it, it doesn't matter if the visual cues go away, you're in sync with the beat, and so long as you're pressing your buttons as your foot goes down, you'll stay in time with Melatonin, and you'll be okay for how you kind of play out with all of the different things. So it doesn't matter if it's going to go a duh, 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 or a duh, 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 because you'll know because your foot's tapping as you go along with it. And the audio cues that are placed inside the music will alert you as to what you're supposed to be doing. So I started to really pull away from using any of the visual cues, and the visuals are fantastic, and they kind of set you into this dreamish, dreamscape fever dream that's going on, but I didn't use any of it to help me get through the rhythm game, if that makes sense. And if you come at this at the same way, I think you'll go far with Melatonin, or at least get there quicker. Outside of those 20 mini games, you get the practice mode, which explains how the mini game for that specific one runs. A scored mode, which is essentially normal mode, where you'll be trying to get up to a maximum of 3 stars for each song that you're playing. Then there's a hard mode, which really does remove all of those visual cues, but also changes a lot of tempo back and forth a lot more often too. And it will be asking you to do more button presses. And the button presses are limited to 3 buttons. You've got I was playing on an Xbox controller, so A for your main kind of central points, and then there's quite a lot of mini games where you'd need to do something to the left or to the right, and then you'd do the L and R bumpers for those. And it worked really, really well because each game is really clearly explained, and then it sticks to its formula as you run through. So you stop thinking about what button to press, and more about just being in the flow with what's going on around you. And that sounds super trite, I know, but when the visuals and the audio cues that it makes you rely on and teaches you to rely on, tells you what's coming next, you do get into the flow of it, and that's what makes Melatonin such a fantastic rhythm action game. There's also a really interesting addition where you can create custom levels in an editor mode. Now what this does is it places all of the different things that could occur into a level into a little menu on the side, and then you can basically it puts the whole song in front of you, and then you kind of drop what you think should happen onto the timeline. It requires you to know how long something would take to trigger, because if you trigger things too quickly, it starts that animation off again. So if you're like going to be like a pizza box moving forward, that's a 4-beat animation to take place and then send something out. It doesn't necessarily tell you that. So what I would say is that the editor requires in-depth knowledge of what each song does as you go along. So some people might kind of go, this makes no sense to me, but if you drag and drop all of the different things in however you want them to be, and you know how long each thing should last, then the editor actually can provide an awful lot more longevity to Melatonin beyond the actual game itself. For me, I was able to complete the base level of Melatonin within an hour and a half, but the hard mode, certainly, and if you're going for all of those free star and free paperclip, which is like the hard level collectible modes, will take you several hours more, because you have to be exacting. And Melatonin is very precise in exactly when it wants you to like land a perfect. And if it's early or if it's late, it's harsh on those scores, so it will only allow you 1 or 2 failures per level. Otherwise, you will not be 3-starring anything. So that perfection does take time and will give you extra hours of gameplay. Plus, if you want to play with the editor mode, there's plenty of that to go too. The music itself isn't extremely memorable, like as a standalone like anthem of anything, but it's just really satisfying in that glockenspiel, cute rounded rubbery synths but chunky beats that are softly brushed way of playing. It comes together really well. I don't know if I'd be like ramping to go and buy the soundtrack outside of this, but it works so well in the context of the game of Melatonin itself. So yeah, Melatonin, easily in my top 3 recommendations of rhythm games in 2022, and 2 hearty thumbs up from me. Written review will be over on highplanegames.com. Take care. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/Higher Network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.